In a world with only hot takes,
Two college friends try to cool down sports media.
join Jack and Jared every week as they tackle the biggest stories in the NFL.
And give the reasonable football analysis you won't hear anywhere else.
Welcome to
710 Sports. Welcome back to 710 Sports with
Jack
and Jared. Thanks for joining us after week 6 of the NFL season. We're here to bring you the hard-hitting analysis looking into next week. We've got segments such as what is the New York Jets ceiling without Aaron Rodgers this season, or possibly with him if he comes back. Also, we are going to be talking about who are legit Super Bowl contenders through the first 6 weeks of the season, as well as previewing some games for week 7. First, we'll do a little bit of review of last week. But Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm glad glad there were some decent games last week. A lot of not decent games, but yeah, I mean I'm doing well. I'm happy to get to commit to watching the tank for the Patriots. Always a fun. I'm a big tank fan. You know. So yeah, excited about that.
Yep, we definitely were. We look like we're in full tank mode there for the Patriots. If you've been following along, we're off for about a week. I was traveling and then I was sick, so that one's on me. And I apologize to our loyal subscribers out there who were looking for my take on the 49ers Cowboys game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was predicting a loss. Not like that. I just can't quite get the loss correct, even though I predict the loss for the Cowboys. Obviously, that was devastating. Now coming off of the game Monday night, I don't feel any better. I feel worse about the Cowboys these last 2 weeks, and I'm not sure if we're gonna have the time to get into it today. But I do believe the Dallas Cowboys are total frauds, and I believe that they are in complete playoff performance.
Playoff form already.
Yes, they're in playoff form in week 6. We don't have to get into that completely, but anyone who watches these games and is familiar with the team, you'll agree with me. Let's jump right into the New York Jets, though. They get a really tough win out against the Eagles. Eagles were 5-0. They actually give them their first loss of the season. Sort of a gritty win. Last-second interception by Jalen Hurts, and now all of a sudden the New York Jets are 3-3. Aaron Rodgers obviously, hurt 4 snaps into the season, so what do you think, Jack, is the ceiling for this New York Jets team? Do you believe that they're still a playoff team, now being 3-3 through 6 games without Aaron Rodgers? Do you think that they're a contender? Do you think that this is just a single blip and they're going to fall off here? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what I have to think about here is with this Jets team. I mean, for one thing, there's the question. Maybe we'll talk about it after of potential reports. Maybe Rodgers comes back. Yes, maybe absolute end of the season. But maybe he comes back. Ooh, stuff like that. I'm gonna sort of think about it for right now. Just imagining that isn't true, and it's gonna be riding it out with Zach Wilson. Still with Rodgers still in the building, maybe helping coach, whatever. But yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it. And I think Zach Wilson, he's had some half decent games. I think it was the game against the Chiefs. That game against the Chiefs, he played better than Mahomes. I'm pretty sure. I now forget it exactly.
Yeah, he did. He outplayed Mahomes.
He has some little eensy bit of potential. He was drafted number 2 for a reason, despite how terribly he has played after that point. I would hope all they need is for him to not be in the way in a lot of these games. They were 3-3, but let's think about the teams they've beaten. They've beaten the Bills. They've beaten at all these. They had 4 snaps of Rodgers there. All these without Rodgers: Bills, Eagles, and Broncos. Forget about that. But they lost by 3 to the Chiefs. The Patriots have beat them years in a row, getting close to a decade in a row. So we'll forget about even with that, they only have one bad loss, really, and that's to the Cowboys, right? They got blown out by the Cowboys. But other than that, this Jets team has played competitive in all these games against some pretty tough opponents that they've won, and like that the only gimme games they've played have been Broncos. Like the only non-playoff teams I would say have been Broncos, Patriots. And like I said, Patriots had the number. So that's why I could see this team, if they can continue this 500 sort of trajectory, I could see them sneaking in a 6th or 7th seed. I have to check their schedule. I don't know if you have their schedule pulled up in terms of strength of schedule, but if they can beat the Patriots for the first time in however long, then that would be the one thing. Like in my mind, okay, like you take that out because they, they never win there, but they got a couple gimmies in a row. I think here, a couple of relatively easy games for a team playing as well as they are. I could see them getting 500, making the playoffs, maybe a bit over 500, whatever, making the playoffs. Now, do I think without Rodgers, I think they will lose in that first round of the playoffs. I don't think they're gonna, be able to. As amazing as the defense is, I don't think it's that good. So I think that is where I would put them. Make the playoffs, but first round exit sort of situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our preseason picks, I believe we both had the Jets sneaking into the playoffs. I know that I did at the 7th seed. And it wasn't because I particularly loved the Jets. It was just that I was a little bit colder on a lot of the other teams. And now you start to look at who's going to be fighting for that 7th spot. The picture's
Chargers?
a little bit clear, I would say the Chargers would not be. I had them missing the playoffs this year. I had the Bengals missing the playoffs. They're now 3-3 and kind of surging, but I still haven't liked what I've seen. But that might have just been classic, start of the season Bengals. But to me, I would say, who's fighting for that last spot? Maybe the Bengals, maybe the Steelers, maybe the Browns, the Jets, and so a lot of those teams actually are very similar. Not great offensive, Steelers, Browns, Jets, not great offensive team, not great quarterbacks, but fantastic defenses. And so can the Jets be the best of those teams at doing that? I wouldn't say that they are today necessarily. The Browns just beat the 49ers with that formula. But I think that they could still, their ceiling is probably, I agree with you, what you just said. 7th seed maybe, and definitely a first round exit to a better AFC team. But the funny thing is, like you said, I don't know if I necessarily believe Aaron Rodgers will be back, but it really puts things into perspective on if you had a quarterback that was going to be better than Zach Wilson, who I'd say he's probably been slightly below average, maybe worse to start the season, but it seems like he's getting a little bit better. If you had Aaron Rodgers with this team, would they be serious Super Bowl contenders? Would we be talking about them in our second segment? Because the defense has been playing so well. They're 3-3 with Zach Wilson. And like I said, I'd be shocked if Aaron Rodgers was back, but if he's rubbing crystals on his nuts or whatever he needs to do to be able to get back before the end of the season, then I actually think the Jets might be onto something if he can come back and play well. Which is its own question, I suppose. But yeah, definitely I see the ceiling for the Jets at that sort of first round exit, like you said.
Yeah. And the last little bit, I'll touch on that just because I pulled up their schedule. They get these next 3 games are a real potential, sort of like momentum setting, building Zach Wilson's confidence because they play the Giants, right? The Giants, New York doing that. Then they play the Chargers, who just stunk it up on national television. But also, I could see that's a sort of team I could see getting rattled by the Jets defense. They get rattled by the Cowboys defense, and then the Raiders, who they're 500 as well, but it isn't. They're a different type of 500. Again, I could easily see that Jets defense doing things there. And then they play the Falcons too. They get to play the Falcons. They play the Texans, who are doing well, right? Who are doing pretty well for themselves. But I don't know. I would take the Jets. If I'm calling that there, I would take the Jets there too. That's 5 games. They play the Commanders. They play the Browns, who are a very similar team, like you were saying. They have the potential to rack up like yes, they could also lose those games, right? They're not many of those aren't gimmies, but there's enough there that I could, see them getting 9, 10 wins. And I think if they make 10 wins in the AFC right now, I think they probably, given how the trajectory of teams like the Bengals not getting off to the start that some people expected and some of us didn't, I could see in a competitive AFC, if you hit 9 wins, I could see that being the 7th seed or 6th seed.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They do have a last place schedule, and that was one of the reasons when you look at the games and you have to pick them, say who's going to be making it into the playoffs. That sort of strength of schedule thing does affect when you are trying to play for that, that final wild card spot versus a team that might be having a second place strength of schedule or something. So it'll be interesting to see where the Jets go this season, but hopefully it continues to be entertaining. They keep it close, which is all we can hope for NFL teams. Let's jump into our second segment. We're calling this one Legit or Forget. We're going to be going over who we think, why their teams are Super Bowl contenders, as in teams who could get to the Super Bowl, if they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, or if we should just forget it, and that they are not actually capable of that. Their ceiling is a little bit lower, maybe one playoff win, first round exit type of thing. So I guess I'll just start right with you, Jack. Do you have any teams that you believe are particular, Super Bowl contenders here through week six?
Yeah, I would say not to get on the hype train. And I know we were mentioning this a bit before, and it's not intentional for me to mention this to sound too much hype, but I was calling it before, and that's the Lions. The Lions here are 5-1. They're coming off a win against the Bucs, a pretty convincing win. Yes, the Bucs aren't the best team in the league, but they were 3-1, I think it was, or something before, and were playing decently. They've beaten teams like the Chiefs. They've been able to really blow out a team like the Packers. They've shown a lot of different stuff there, offensively and defensively, in these games. And really, I don't see a super clear weakness of the team. I don't see a super clear. Their defense is very improved with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, some of the draft capital, that they've seemed. What was the safety who I now forget? He was like a nickelback / safety, but like with some of their additions in free agency,
Anzalone.
And stuff, yeah, exactly. They got Anzalone. Got to make sure not to mispronounce that name. But yeah, he's played their defense is playing pretty well, and that was last year was the big weakness. There's some stat out there in the past 18 games they're like 12-6 or 13-5 or something since the second half of last season, and they lost to the Seahawks. They lost to a Seahawks team who beat them, I believe, last year, also in a high scoring game. Like that was like 50-45 or something. That game, they lost in overtime in a sort of shootout game against a team that has had their number in recent years. And that's their only loss. Other than that, they would have been the only undefeated team in the NFL. So that's, I'm kind of buying some of that hype. I don't see a clear weakness of this team, other than some players maybe having low ceilings. I could see that argument. Goff maybe having a low ceiling, but I would say hopefully his floor is high enough that he's not going to really crap the bed too much the way other quarterbacks might.
So you're saying legit Lions?
Yes, that's what I am. I'm saying I'm buying the hype. I'm
saying forget Lions. If I could short the Lions right now, I'd do it. All right. Look at this schedule. I'm going to give them the Chiefs win, obviously, but it was a 1-point win with the Chiefs down men, to start the season.
Yeah.
So let's say that. Now, then you play the Seahawks, and you lose in overtime.
Loss.
So right after that, they're 50-50 in my mind, right, against good playoff teams. After that, they've played the Falcons, the Packers, the Panthers, and the Bucks. Okay, that's basically the NFC South plus the Packers. All right? I understand someone from that division will be in the playoffs, but we don't think that they're going to win a game. This is who the Lions have won 3 or 4
any of
straight
those teams
by
can be playoff.
plus 17 or whatever the stat these guys are throwing out there. look at who they're playing, right? We don't have any faith in those teams. Let's say, okay, against good teams, they've been 500, and that's good. Like you said, maybe not a true weakness in general, but I got to look at the schedule. And if you continue to look at the schedule, this is going to continue to happen. This team, if you look at who they're playing, guess what they got coming up? They got the Raiders. They got the Chargers. They got the Bills. They got the Packers again. They got the Saints. They got the Bears again. Broncos. Vikings twice.
That's another.
You look at the
first
losses.
round bye right there. That's a first round bye.
Oh, definitely.
Ooh.
You've got the Ravens next week, which we'll probably talk about, then the Cowboys in Week 17. Okay, that's the games that you would say maybe they lose those games, and even if you give them another one, they're 13-4. If they only lose those two, they're whatever. Like they're 14-3.
Yeah.
Okay, in the NFC. That might be good enough for the first seed, but I don't know. The schedule it's very advantageous. So they could literally be 14-3, and I'm not sure if they don't, if they lose to the Ravens and maybe beat the Cowboys, I'm still going to have my questions, and I'd forget them.
I think that's fair.
Let's talk about who I think is possibly a contender. And I'm going to have to – I mean, it's obvious, but we don't have to go on it forever. But come on, Kansas City Chiefs, suddenly their weakness is the pass game. What? Their defense has been locked down all season. And suddenly the formula has switched. They've never been able to win games scoring 17 points, scoring 19 points. Like that's really not been the formula for that team, for this team. And now – that's the strength. They're holding teams to held the Lions to 21, and a big problem in that game was that the receivers weren't catching the ball, right? Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid will find a way to get guys open, to get people comfortable, to make the pass game work. And with that defense, I mean, I'd be more scared of the Chiefs now than I would have been after they won the Super Bowl last year. What do you think, Jack? Legit or forget?
I think that's a really interesting point, because when you first said it, I was thinking forget. I was thinking I'm cold. Hot take, I'm cold on them. But that is a sort of point that you make me think of I would have faith in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes figuring out the offensive woes, because the defense has looked pretty good this year. The defense seems to have taken a step up in a lot of ways. It seemed the defense has been looking good, and they could likely get things together on offense. This happened, it was maybe 2 seasons ago, maybe 3. There was a whole thing where the Chiefs got off to a very slow start. And I remember this because who's the guy? Not First Take, not First Things First or something?
Yeah.
Whatever his name is.
Nick
who's
Wright?
A big Chiefs fan. Nick Wright. And I was thinking, what is Nick Wright? The dude is crazy. He's just a Chiefs homer for like putting Chiefs like first when they're were objectively playing poorly, and all the talk, like, did they figure out Patrick Mahomes has been figured out? Cover 2, like 2 deep safeties defeats Patrick Mahomes, and for a time it was, but then they got their act together and made it to the AFC Championship that year. If it's the year I'm thinking of, right? And it is like that is the sort of idea where I could see this Chiefs team, if the defense finds a good footing, I think the offense will catch up, which is going to make me agree with you. Although my instinct would be to disagree with you.
Okay, but now let me ask you this one, or do you have one?
Oh, I'm curious your question here.
All right, legit or forget? San Francisco 49ers coming off of this loss to the Browns.
Oh, spicy one. Purdy with a not so Purdy game, but also I mean, legit. I think they're legit because I think there's a decent chance of them winning the NFC Championship game. I would say this game puts worries in my mind. I mean, obviously it's a loss, right? Obviously, a loss is going to put worries in your mind. But I think this Browns team is also in that potential 7 seed sort of territory if Deshaun Watson A comes back and B actually plays half decently. Then I think they're a dangerous team with the offensive scheming and the defense just overall. So So I'm not going to write them off too much from that game. It is a tough loss. I mean, if they lost this game, if they won this game, then they're like that gets into will Brock Purdy ever lose territory? Ever lose a game he doesn't like tear his UCL on? It gets into that. Like, wow, will have won like 13 straight games where he didn't tear his UCL and like 10 straight regular. Like at some point they were due for a loss, and I think there are a lot of worse losses for them to have. So I'm going to keep the faith enough, I'll say.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and disagree. Right now at week 6, I'm going to forget, and it's because I remember the way that the season ended last year. Okay, and now you remind me, Jack. Though, why do you think the 49ers lost in the playoffs last year? What would be the biggest reason you'd say?
I'm going to say injuries.
Injuries. Very good. Ding, ding, ding. Injuries. Yes. Everyone knows that we've done advanced data analysis on this. Go look at our clips. The 49ers disproportionately are injured more than any other team. Not exactly sure why, but they need to get it figured out. And once again, it's not just that they lost to the Browns. It's that the offense looked particularly worse because they lost a couple of key skill players to injury, right? And this happens to a lot of teams.
But it's natural.
Frankly, the Lions have had a lot of guys injured. They still look pretty good. The Seahawks have had injuries. They've still, they're above 500. Everyone's dealing with that, but for some reason, the 49ers just seem to have bigger problems in terms of more injuries to bigger key players. And it comes back to bite them more than I think I've ever seen in my entire life watching football. And so right off the bat, I see it here again in this game, and it makes me think even if they could get to the Super Bowl, what's stopping Brock Purdy from getting hurt? Then you've got Sam Darnold. They've traded away guys. They've let guys go in that QB room. You traded Trey Lance. You let Jimmy G walk. Now you've got Sam Darnold backing up Purdy. And behind him, you've got a guy named Brandon Allen. So, for all we know, they're going to be on their 4th string QB in the NFC Championship because that's where we were last year. So, I'm going to say for right now, forget because I'm worried about the injuries.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'm going to ask you one quick last one maybe here.
Yeah,
because I'm curious your thoughts. Thoughts on the Bills? How do you feel about the Bills? They coming off a close win against the Giants, potentially could have been a loss if with different officiating. What are your thoughts on the Bills?
Oh yeah, I mean I forget the Bills in terms of Super Bowl contender. I think that team has been better in previous years, and we haven't seen them. We haven't seen them go to the Super Bowl, right? They've always been bested by either Mahomes and the Chiefs or Burrow and the Bengals. I look at the team now and I say, I don't think that they're as good. And they're basically, there's nothing that's really different about this team from previous years. They blow out bad teams. They do not give up bad losses to, teams like, the Raiders or whoever else they've played, the Commanders. But then you also see in games where, in games against better teams, like, the opener against the Jets, against the Jags, that's in London. Even against the Giants, I guess that's kind of a different type of game. But in prime time against the Giants, they struggle. The only thing that's different is that Dolphins game. That's the only thing that's different on the schedule this year. Yeah. I say to myself, man, they looked really good against the Dolphins, and I'm hot on the Dolphins. So I'm going to say forget, just because. How can you take them to go to the Super Bowl in a loaded AFC when you've never seen it before? What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Also, even to the point of that Dolphins game being the one thing this season that really registers as a difference in my mind. Them crushing a team like the Raiders or something is to be expected, right? They always do stuff like that. And then them maybe winning, but in a close, questionable way against a team like the Giants, I can see that. Them losing they lost to the Jags, last year, I think. Like them losing games, I feel like, well, how did they not win this game? Josh Allen has not playing similarly as he has past years, which is great, right? He's a good quarterback, but also making some of these boneheaded mistakes or playing hero ball, and some of that I'm still seeing. And yeah, like you said, it's not like I'm trying to think about any major addition on defense. Maybe we're going to see Von Miller, like we got Von Miller on the team where he was hurt for like almost all season last season. Like maybe there's him, but then they lost Tremaine Edmonds. I think it's on the Bears now or something, where they're one of their linebackers. Him and Matt Milano. Matt Milano's still there, although I think he's hurt. But like there is that. I don't see a whole lot different, and they've lost in these games that truly matter. They lose in these playoff games that truly matter. They have close games they shouldn't be close. They, yeah. But they sort of inflate their stats and stuff, and you can really see, they're so amazing because they demolish offensively and defensively some terrible team. They'll just demolish them, like they're going to do this week. They're going to take their frustrations out after such a close win against the Giants, and they're going to see the Patriots, and it's going to be the Saints beat them 34-0. This this Bills game will be gross.
Oh yeah, classic.
So,
and also, me saying that they're not true contenders, hopefully it leaves a slight glimmer of hope that on December 17th, when I go and see my Cowboys play the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, that maybe the Cowboys could get a win. Even though the Cowboys also are not contenders, and I'd forget them as well. But just gives me an opportunity.
Bonus take in there.
Yeah. All right, and let's close out with a couple of the games from Week 7. I think the biggest game is the primetime Sunday night game, the Miami Dolphins versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 2.5-point favorites right now, and I'm just going to jump right into this one. As hot as I am on the Dolphins, we talked about it earlier in this podcast. You got to look at the schedule and who they've played, and the answer to that is the Dolphins have not played anyone good except the Bills, and they got absolutely dominated by the Bills. Let me just read you off who the Dolphins have beat. Barely beat the Chargers, not a good team in my opinion. Patriots, a bad team. Broncos, an awful team. The Giants, a bad team, and the Panthers, maybe the worst team. And so this is who basically that Miami has been clowning on the entire season. And I like Miami because I love their offense, but their defense isn't particularly good. And they're going to be going against an Eagles offense that has a lot of weapons, good scheme, I think, and probably will be looking to bounce back after this loss to the Jets. I know the Eagles haven't looked fantastic really all season, and they're starting off what I would say is one of the worst and hardest stretches of a schedule I've ever seen. It's going to be 8 games of pretty much 7 of the teams will be playoff teams this year. They're playing the Chiefs, they're playing the Bills, they're playing the Seahawks, they're playing the Cowboys twice. This and the Dolphins, and this is just the start of it. So I think that they're going to have to get off on a good foot for that to, for them to actually have a chance to maybe win the division still, because the Cowboys are still hanging around. So I definitely have the Eagles in this game. I would expect them to cover because, like I said, Miami played against a good team. They did not look good. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I think in classic 710 sports fashion, I'm gonna have to disagree.
Ooh,
I'm gonna have to disagree, despite my Dolphins' doubt and despite the relatively troubling strength of schedule mention that you just brought up. But in my mind, I see the Eagles, despite also having a great record, they beat this Patriots team by 5, and that's just the Patriots probably were their best week 1. There weren't injuries yet. I could see that, but they beat Patriots by 1 score. Patriots could have easily won that game as well. Like that was a Patriots had the ball, this yard line, this much time left. Like they could have done that. Like any team that's not the Patriots could have made that drive. Other than Giants probably couldn't either. But then they lose. I mean they lose. They win by only 6 against the Vikings, like a 1-score game against the Vikings. Right, this is a win, but 1-score game against the not amazing Vikings team that puts up 28 on them. They beat the Bucs. Right, this is their most convincing win, 14 points. They beat the Bucs by. They win in overtime by a field goal to the Commies. to the Washington Commanders. They beat the Rams 9 points. That's 2 scores, but it doesn't feel a 23-14 game. It doesn't feel like the former NFC champions. I know the Rams are good this year, and then they lose to the Jets. Frankly, again, 1 score. I could see there's no game there that really screams to me, wow, this Eagles team is something different, man. You know, like maybe the Rams, right? 9 point victory against the Rams that were without Stafford were fifth worst team in the league last year. Whatever the Lions pick was 6th worst. Yes, Stafford's back and all, but there's like that's the most meaningful win to me. But a lot of their wins aren't super meaningful, and the offense hasn't looked like it's been really clicking as much as it had been last year. They are adding Julio Jones, has just been signed by the Eagles of Falcons fame, of Titans fame.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a couple hours ago. So, but like, I mean, that like they're adding on more veterans for this push. But like, I could definitely see them winning. But I see the Dolphins as outside of that loss to Buffalo have also similarly looked really good against bad teams, but they're blowing out bad teams.
Yeah, that's true.
They're sort of embarrassing bad teams, you could say. And I think that I think this game will be. So I'm gonna take the Dolphins. I think it will be a field goal, that sort of spread. Either way, I would definitely take Dolphins covering at 2.5. I think it would be a 1-2, maybe 3, 2.5. I guess 3 covers that, but like 3-point win if the Eagles win. I think it will be close, but I'm going to take the Dolphins, and I think this game will tell us a lot about both of these teams. I mean, if it's like in any case, if we want to say both teams look amazing, well then that's going to tell us both teams look amazing. Hopefully, it's a close, really good game. If it's just close in general, I don't think a team losing will necessarily mean they're a bad team. But I think how these teams play each other, both teams being stressed, the Dolphins maybe being stressed for the first time other than Buffalo, how do they respond to that?
Right.
And similarly for the Eagles, now you have a team. You're going to have to either really contain them, which they didn't really do with the Vikings. Vikings still put up 28 points. They just scored more. Either really contain them or really get things clicking on offense. Like the Eagles have to do one of those this week, which will be interesting to see. Which I think it's a very informative game. More than anything, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I wouldn't be upset if the Dolphins win because I'm hot in the Dolphins. I predicted that they would win their division and they'd be, they'd be very good this season. So also them beating the Eagles would be great for me as a Cowboys fan. Let's quickly jump into any thoughts on Lions versus the Ravens. Heading into that's a 1:00 game. Should also be a very good one. I know a couple of good offenses, a couple of good QBs. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think this will be really interesting as well to sort of tell me what to think of the Ravens having lost 2 games, lost to the Colts of all teams, as well as lost to with I think Gardner Minshew playing the majority of the snaps.
Yeah,
I think that was an overtime loss. Losing that
was a weird game.
Losing to the Steelers, which yes, there's always divisional stuff there, especially with teams like when it's like a Ravens Steelers. Of course, there's a lot of history there, but they still lost. They still only put up 10 points, I think, against the Steelers defense, but still only 10 points. You gave up 17 to that Steelers offense. There's sort of stuff there. Of for me, this is a real good. Is a real good moment. I don't think if they lose, it necessarily is too troubling for the Ravens, but if they win, I think that's a real good sign. That's a really good sign for them. I'm gonna take, because of the hype train and the sort of because of the hype train, I'm gonna have to say, right, like you're always the most confident right before you fall.
Oh.
And I could see the Lions. I could see this being a trap game. Yes, it's a prepare for the rate. Like yes, it's a team you prepare for. It's not like playing. You're going to play the Cardinals or something like the Cowboys had. But like I could see this being we've been crushing all the teams. We beat the Chiefs. Everyone in the NFL world loves us right now. We're hot. I could see this being the sort of game where if you let off the gas just a little bit, I think this Ravens team's good enough to sort of punish you for that. and I could see that being a consideration. And it's the Lions. The Lions have had enough. Lions fans have had their share now. Lions fans don't get much. You get to be ranked like number 2, number 3 by a lot of national ranking teams in the league, which I think it might be fair. Which I think is fair. But you had that. You got to go back down now. Back to 0-16. Back to the basement.
So,
and that's what's going to happen this week.
I agree, and I'm gonna say a couple of things. First of all, I want to give Lamar Jackson some love because he has been playing really good this season. He's been playing better than I expected based off the last couple of seasons where I think he's had some injury problems. And I know a lot of our viewers have actually pointed out, hey, we're not watching the tape on Lamar. We're not giving him enough love, and I think that's true, especially because he's been fighting the drops with his receivers. And I don't think that they've really been performing how the Ravens expected them to when they went and got Odell and they got Zay Jones. So, but I think Lamar's playing great. Also, the hype train, I 100% agree with you. The hype train is going to go off the rails if the Lions win this game, because if you look at the rest of their schedule, they're going to continue to win. Next thing you know, they're going to go 5, 6, 7 games in a row winning. And against bad teams, and it seems like they have no problem blowing those teams out or winning by 10 plus. So all of a sudden, it's going to be Lions are going to the Super Bowl, and I can't handle that type of hype for the Detroit Lions. Like you said,
too much.
I'm happy for the fans, but I just don't think that they are. I don't think they're a legitimate contender. So. And I don't really need to see more of Dan Campbell. I think I've seen enough. I think I know what it is. I'm more of a Mike McDaniels guy in terms of like weird coaches like that are like don't really fit the mold or the model. I think I'm going to go with Mike McDaniel. Dan Campbell, not really my vibe if you can't tell. So I'm just going to say I'm going to take the Ravens here, and hopefully it just delays some of that hype for another couple of weeks until they get another little stretch here where they win 3 in a row.
Anything you think that the Ravens should do? Anything? I mean, with that good point that you mentioned, with their receivers have been dropped. I forgot about that. They've been getting tons of drops. Is there anything you think that they can sort of try to do to remedy that? Right? Other like in terms of, I don't know, I can't think of any notable free agent, but is there any trade? I know Jerry Jeudy's potentially up for sale. If you're looking for him, frankly, the Patriots should be selling someone like Kendrick Bourne. If you thought you could get a Ravens second for Kendrick Bourne, I think that could be a decent trade, because Kendrick Bourne, I don't know. He's a decent enough player. I don't know. I could see a couple guys on selling teams potentially if they're teams that start trying to sell before the deadline. I could see maybe if they can toss a second, third, if they look good, if they beat the Lions, I could see them saying, "Hey, we need to give Lamar help, right? It's not working. We got to do something, right? This is the time."
Yeah. So on one hand, I think that they're still playing all right. I think Lamar's playing good, and I do think that if you went into the season, if that organization and that the GM went into the season and said, "We think we have enough with Odell and Jones," I think they'd still believe that. They think they just need to ride this out a little bit, kind of push through some of this. But I don't know if I'd go and get Jerry Jeudy. He's underperformed in Denver. You think about guys selling, like the Panthers already sold DJ Moore, but they have Thielen now. Could they sell Adam Thielen? Who's Young going to throw?
Who's buying?
Yeah, or like you say, I guess the Patriots. If you just want the full tank, so you're like,
at this point, right?
We'll give away our B- receiver.
7.
We'll send everyone out. We'll get rid of everybody.
They're going to be one of they got a tough 2 games here. I think they're about to be 1-7.
Yeah, Bills in Miami, I believe, right?
I think that's it.
Yeah. So listen. I don't know. I think the Ravens are going to be fine. I think I'd hold on that. If they believe that was enough, it might be. But they have a good defense, and they play a grittier type of football than the Lions, I would say, even though the Lions, their whole thing is rah, but they're an offensive team. They love passing the ball. and then you've got like the Chiefs are now a little bit more of a grittier defensive team. So I don't know. Maybe that's the formula for the Ravens. We'll see. Any other thoughts here going into Week 7 before we close out, Jack?
Nope. Other than Patriots. Like I just mentioned, Patriots probably going to lose these next 2 games. Probably going to be 1-7 there. I mean, because Bills Dolphins. I don't think they're gonna. They didn't beat the Dolphins when they were playing relatively better and had fewer injuries, and they couldn't beat the Dolphins. And I don't think they're beating the Bills. Short of a literal act of God, of some sort of weather game. Because I think I could see Patriots winning a weather game against the Bills, but
hey, listen, there were
too early in the season.
Jack and I had talked about it pre-show. We've got some Patriots takes. We've got some Bill Belichick clips coming up. So check out that as the Patriots continue to descend into full tank. Also, I've been brewing up a little Jalen Hurts take that I really got to grind the all-22 on, going back to last year. To make sure that I want to get confirmation about this take of mine. I want to make sure that there's legit truth to it. So maybe stay tuned for that next week. We'll be going over what happened in Week 7 and looking out into Week 8. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you see those clips. Make sure you like if you enjoyed the podcast, and follow wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also the full video podcast on YouTube. Other than that, thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. This was 710 Sports with
Jack
and Jared. See you next time.